So you can really make an argument that if you're not failing enough, then you're not pushing yourself enough. And it's something interesting because for so many of us, we shy away from failure. We don't want to fail, but that's because we have a bad relationship with it. We have this understanding or belief about failure that it's not good for us. But what we have to realize and what we have to understand is that failure isn't bad. It's neutral, and the way we define it can make it negative or even positive. And it's one of the things that I think I found in my own entrepreneurial life that the more that I focused on things going negatively when they went bad, the worse I was, and I wasn't able to move forward. But guess what? In especially in entrepreneurship, you're going to fail often and you're going to fail a lot. And it's going to happen. And what's interesting is I think it happens in all areas of life. So even if you're not an entrepreneur and you have a W-2, or you're in a relationship, or you're just trying to lose weight, or whatever it might be that you're trying to do, there are going to be times where you're not going to succeed. And that's honestly the best place to grow. That is the time when we know, that's when we're going to be able to learn about ourselves in terms of where we are realistically. Because for so many of us, we get so caught up and we have this idea about who we really are. And because of that, we're not able to move forward. We're not able to get out of the funk. We're not able to really get to the next level because we're so stuck with where we are. And if we could start to understand just a little bit that, hey, you know what? I don't have to be here anymore and I can actually learn from this experience, then what's going to happen is we're going to be able to move forward and get ourselves out of there. And I remember the first time that I learned about failure like this. And it was a tough time because I got into a call with one of my coaches and he saw that I was distraught. He saw that like I was a mess. And he said, "Ben, what's going on?" And I said, what happened, and unfortunately, I was in this doing this big real estate deal. It wasn't really so big. For me, it was big because it was one of my first ones. And I lost a lot of money. Like the property got sold and I lost a lot of money. And what was interesting is that he looked at me and asked me, so like, why are you so upset? And I repeated myself, like, what do you mean? Why am I so upset? I just told you I lost a lot of money in this real estate deal. And he said, yeah, but that's just feedback. And I remember when he said that, I took a step back or a seat back in my chair. And I was like, can you please repeat that? He's like, yeah, that's just feedback. And it was the first time that I understood that there is a different way to really relate to failure because it's going to happen. And I think for all of us, we all get into these levels in terms of like where it is that we are. And we think we're at a certain level, but guess what? Life is going to tell you what level you're at. Life is going to show you what you can really handle. And that it's our job to say, hey, you know what? This is where I am. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the reality, even though we might want to be further ahead. It's like I remember when I was in college, my freshman year, so they had to like do math placement tests to see where everybody went, and everybody was like, I don't know why, but like people wanted to like place in the higher classes, and for them, like you could study really hard and get into the higher class, but like if that's not where you were, then like you're really taking it like you're putting yourself in a position where you're just gonna fail because like you're not really there yet. And I think for so many of us, we're all trying to shoot, we're trying to put ourselves in a pedestal where, I'm really good at X, Y, and Z. And therefore, I have to be doing this. It's like those parents. I remember when working in high school, those parents who like take their kids and like want to put them in the honors class. Well, it's like that's nice. You want to say like your kid's in honors, but if your kid's in honors, he's going to fail out, and then he's just going to lose his self-esteem, his confidence, and he's not going to succeed in school. Or we could build him up to the honors, and then maybe we could push him. We could try to coach him up to get to those places. But understanding that is very different. And for so many of us, we get so stuck with the status of needing to be at a certain place. And life is going to show us this is where you really are. And for a lot of us, we get so faked out in terms of where it is that where we are versus the reality that we end up just getting so annoyed. We get so frustrated because like when I invested in that real estate deal, I'm not supposed to lose money. Like, I had this whole big idea about how I'm going to grow my business and do everything X, Y, and Z. But guess what? That was just the way the world was showing me. Bennett, this is your feedback. You're not ready to do the next step because you still have steps to be learning over here. And it was a massive change. And for me, I had to, spend it on a lot of money. For other people, it might not be money. It could be emotions. It could be relationships. Whatever it might be for you, it could be something. And I think for all of us, we all have different things in our lives that we want to be able to do. We want to be able to accomplish, but we have to be realistic with where we are. And once we're realistic with where we are, then we have the ability to learn and to move forward. Because if we could put ourselves on a situation where we're not putting ourselves on a pedestal, so when we fail, it's not going to be like crazy because like, yeah, I'm not like I'm over here right now. Like this is where I know I'm supposed to be. And it's the shift that we have to start to make in order to be able to move forward and get that feedback as quickly as possible. Because what happens also with when it comes to failure is that a lot of people end up failing, and because they have this unrealistic expectation of their own lives, they end up failing, and then they end up staying down for longer because like they're so distraught because they're not supposed to be doing that. They're not supposed to fail. They're the perfect child, or they're the perfect student, or whatever it is that they're supposed to be doing. But it just holds them down even longer because they have to like then pull themselves up even further. So recognizing that we need to understand where it is that we are is going to be something that's going to be able to help us to be able to move forward. So if you are working on something, if you're in sales, if you are trying to build your business, if you're trying to write a book, if you're trying to create your own online course, if you're trying to, build relationships, you have a relationship with somebody, understand that that failure isn't anything bad. It's not negative. It's the feedback. It's like when I was going out with a bunch of different girls, and then all of a sudden, like things weren't working out. I'm like, hey, you know what? There's only one thing that's the common thread over here, and that's me. I got to figure this thing out. Who is this Bennett guy? What's going on? I remember one of the big things is like a girl one time asked me, Bennett, what are your passions? And I was like a stupid boy answer. I was like, basketball. She's like, no, like, come on, like, what are your passions? And I'm like, I have no idea. And it freaked me out afterwards because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, Bennett, what are your passions? Like, what do you like doing? What can you just get lost in and just do it for so long? And for me, that was a big eye-opening moment. And I think for all of us, we have those eye-opening moments, and life just shows us our faces like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And then you have to take the feedback because it's very easy to just jump right back into everything we were doing. It's very easy to just continue with our days and to forget about what happened. It's easy for me to forget about the thousands of dollars that I had lost in a real estate deal because you know what, no, I know better. Like come on, that's not me. That was just a fluke. And that's when people get burnt again and again and again and again. And if you're not learning, if you're not becoming somebody from that, then you're not going to be able to move forward because life's going to show you again and again and again. And I think it's something that is so powerful because it's something that's inevitable and it's not a bad thing. That's what I'm trying to say. Failure is not a bad thing. It's just feedback. And I want you to tell yourself that. So the next time you go through something and it doesn't go the way you wanted it, it's not bad. It's just feedback. And there's nothing bad with feedback. And guess what? You don't really have to share that feedback with anybody. It's not like your boss gave you feedback. Like, hey, you really need to work on, showing up on time or, work on your punctuations when you send emails out, whatever it might be that you're trying to do. And I think for all of us, we have our stuff and we all want to be able to succeed. We all want to be able to move forward in different areas of our lives. And we want to think highly of ourselves. So I'm not saying like we should put ourselves to the bottom of the totem pole and just say, you know what, I'm terrible in order to like trick ourselves to move forward. But we need to be realistic and we can have a realistic vision and a dream. Like one of the big, ideas that I think people try to figure out in life is like, how am I supposed to have a specific dream to attain greatness, let's say? So you have like these high performers, a lot of people that I speak to, work with, they want to be doing so much more. They want to have the impact that they want to be having, but yet they're not there yet. So they want to be somewhere, they're not there, and then there's this massive gap. So how am I supposed to be content if I'm not there? So for a lot of people, that's the energy and the fuel that they used in order to get to that place. And then once they get there, they feel great. And then they're like, wait a second, I need to set another goal and do another goal and another goal, which I don't think is a bad thing. I know a lot of people bash that. Understanding that we have to be realistic that there's going to be another goal, I think is a thing. Like if you think like it's the end goal, like for me personally, like I really want to get a Tesla, right? I really, really want to get a Tesla. But I know that once I get a Tesla, after a couple of weeks, even I'm going to be okay. Like what's next? But I realize that I understand that there's going to be another step after that. But I think we all need to be realistic with what's going on. And I think once we could start to do that, then we have this ability to say, hey, you know what? What are the steps I need to take? How can I be present in the moment? How can I just be living in the moment and say, what is going on? What's going on right now? is all I need. It's everything I need to be doing. So I'll give you an example. And the reason why I'm really speaking about this topic is recently we're working on some stuff, really cool stuff behind the scenes in terms of like the new coaching stuff that we're going to be offering and whatnot. Sneak peek, it's a little bit of it's like an online community feel. Not for everybody. It's not necessarily for everybody, but for it's going to be for like coaches. It's going to be for people who are thought leaders and experts who are trying to get their voices out in other ways than possibly that they're doing, and really just help give the support and the process and even the editing and all that fun stuff. So one of the things that we're trying to figure out is how do we build this thing? Like, this is going to be a beast of a monster. And there's so many steps to the process. And especially like the more you get into the marketing understanding of the game, it's like, oh my gosh, there are so many things you need to be doing. And so many things we're going to be new at that we're going to need to be doing. And what we realize is that there's going to be these steps, and there's going to be a lot of feedback we're going to be getting. And you can see how I'm using that word feedback. And what we have to realize is that if we can continuously learn the feedback and get that feedback loop quicker, then we can readjust. And we can continue doing whatever it is that we need to be doing and constantly build this thing out. And I think it's something that is so important that so many people don't focus on. So I understand that I'm going to be a newbie in certain areas. And I realize that if I want to continue to get better, and I don't think you need to be like so amazing at it. I just think you need to get a little better, because I think most people can't get through that first step. So you don't need to get to step 10, but you get to step 2 or 3, you're pretty good. So if I can get to step 3, I know that I'll be able to do what I'm trying to be doing. But I understand that this is going to be a big learning curve for me. So what I need to recognize is that I need to try to figure out what is going on right now. What are the steps I need to take now so I can move forward? And for me personally, I just sort of whole post about how I was getting so overwhelmed with all the steps. And I need to really just break it down step by step. And what are the steps I need to be focusing on now? Because, with this online community, there's the whole marketing of like really getting people in and running ads and all that good stuff. And then there's actual like community aspect, which is a whole nother beast. And it's very easy because I've done in the past where I've started a community and I've done this big thing and I've created all the courses and all that really fun stuff. But then it's like pulling teeth to get people in. I was like, okay, like I've tried that strategy before. I'm going to do it a different way, where I'm going to first try to get the people in, and then I'll build a community. Because if I can start to get the people in, then I have the ability to move forward to transition them into a community. And then I can build the community the way I want it, slower and more foundational, so I can get to the places that I want. So I think for so many of us, we try to rush to the end. And when we rush to the end, which has happened to me millions of times because I'm very impatient, we end up stumbling along the way. We end up tripping a lot more along the way. We're more bruised up, and it's a lot harder to pick ourselves up. It's happened. And what we need to recognize and what we need to understand is, what is it that we can start to do? How is that we can start to build right now what it is? And to recognize, hey, what I'm doing right now, I'm going to be focusing on. I'm not going to focus on step 2 or 3, because right now step 2 or 3 doesn't really matter. And if I can just focus on step 1 and understand and recognize and learn step 1, there's going to be so much more opportunity for step 2 and 3. That even if I'm behind in those areas, I'll be okay because I still got one moving, one's still flowing. And it was something that it's been years now that I've been trying to work on these things. And I think I'm finally getting it. I can't wait to share the results with everybody. But to understand that if I could just slow down, be a student, and just get that feedback, because I know there's going to be so much feedback. And guess what? The feedback's not even like heavy right now. Usually when you're like, like you're going to work out, you're like, oh, I'm dreading it. I don't want to work out. This is going to be terrible. I do not want to feel like I'm going to be like ripping off like my body. But it's so light right now because all it's doing is like, it's going to get me closer to my goal, because I know right now, I don't know where I'm going to be in a couple of weeks. I don't know what's going to be happening. I don't know the feedback I'm going to be getting, just because it's all new. And that's totally fine. So ask yourself, what is it that you're going through? What has been something recently that you quote unquote failed that we could look at and get curious? Get curious as a child and ask yourself, what's the feedback from this? What is the world trying to tell me? What is God trying to tell me? Put me into a specific place to say, hey, you know what? I really got to work on X, Y, and Z. You know what? I can't stay in a relationship. Maybe it's not the other people. Maybe it's something I have to do. And maybe if it is the other people, then maybe it's something with me to stop getting into these bad relationships with bad people. right? That's also has to do with you. And we all need to figure this out for ourselves. And I think regardless of how you're going to figure it out, you're going to keep getting it smacked in your face. So you might as well man up, face it, and say, what is going on here? And really coach yourself. I find a very powerful prompt that you can do is you could really journal to yourself. So if you have a journal or a piece of paper, or even, I don't know, you could do something, but you could talk to yourself. Like, I know it sounds weird, but I'm telling you, like, literally talk to yourself and ask yourself, like, what's going on here? What is something that I can get from this? And like, pretend you're going back and forth, asking yourselves questions and giving yourself answers, and then questioning your answers. I'm telling you, you could get so deep in it. And it's something that's really, really powerful. I've done it a bunch of times in certain areas of my life. You can even like start doing certain meditations of about seeing like a future version of yourself, of a more successful version of yourself, and having that more successful person and noticing that person and really looking up to that person, because that person's you. It's your ideal self. And ask that person questions. And what's crazy is you'll ask that person questions and then they'll give you answers. And you're like, oh my gosh, like that's already in me. I already know the answer. It can be so powerful. I'm telling you, this stuff, it might sound weird, it might sound hokey pokey, but I'm telling you, this stuff works. And if you don't want to do the hokey pokey stuff, understand that it's just feedback. And all you have to do is learn from it in order to be able to move forward and take advantage of that. If you have any questions, like always, feel free to reach out. We'll see everybody on the next one.